It's time for round 2 of our Mass Effect Legendary Edition analysis as we look at the last gen performance, that being PS4 and Xbox One based machines, and of course PS4 Pro and Xbox One X. Now, I've covered the newer PS5 and Xbox Series X delivery of the game. 60fps is very much in sight on the new generation hardware, which is great, but after so many requests, today I'm checking out all PS4 and Xbox One platforms as well. A whistle-stop tour, if you like, of each with a focus on image quality and performance. So as we go through each in turn, the question really is, can any of these machines deliver a solid 30fps? And also, can the enhanced Pro or One X even be pushed to a more ambitious 60fps on the frame rate mode? Let's dock into the Citadel once more to find out. Okay, let's cover the basics before we kick off. Just as with running on PS5, Series X or S, we have 2 modes for each last gen platform. As detailed by EA's exhaustive spreadsheet of resolution targets and frame rates, no console misses out here. In each case, we have 2 modes, one with a focus on quality visuals at 30fps, and another frame rate mode at 60fps. Amazingly, even base PS4 and Xbox One systems, vintage 2013 hardware, get a 60fps option, though really it's perhaps not the best idea to use it. So to cut to the chase a little, I was personally most curious in the unlocked 60fps frame rate modes to see how the 4 consoles divide up. The pecking order is very stark right away. For a 60fps target anyway, all struggle from the off in the first game's Eden Prime mission and also the Citadel. So this is the frame rate mode in a 4-way split. PS4 systems on left and Xbox systems on right for a sense of perspective before we go to the 30fps quality mode. The obvious point here is that yes, all struggle to hand in a solid 60fps on the frame rate mode. Later areas in Mass Effects 2 and 3 fare better, especially on PS4 Pro, which we'll get to later. But it's certainly not consistent. A bit of a shame, but it's maybe expected given we saw similar issues on Series S dropping too. A few notes to add here as well. The base PS4 and Xbox One each run with a 1080p resolution target as you'd expect. We can't rule out DRS in the frame rate mode, but so far 1080p comes up in every sample we've tested, despite these radical drops under 60. Likewise, PS4 Pro and One X run at 1440p each, and again, resolution adjustments aren't noticed obviously in either case. There is a chance DRS can kick in elsewhere, but seemingly not during sub 60fps drops like this. This pecking order stands out for an obvious reason as well. PS4 Pro leads the pack in gameplay for frame rate mode, which is unexpected. It's consistent across Mass Effects 1, 2 and 3, and One X surprisingly trails behind despite being a high-spec 6 teraflop machine compared to 4.2 teraflops on PS4 Pro. We've done some digging, at least in pixel counting the image, and the exact cause isn't 100% clear. The resolutions are matched at 1440p in countless frames tested, where resolution is so often the trade-off with performance in these machines. Now potentially there could be differences in other core settings between them, or hidden optimizations. Either way, it's a consistent result. Pro is undoubtedly a smoother way to play, though none truly hold 60 across the board. There is a twist to this 4-way comparison: cutscenes. Cutscenes in the frame rate mode engage VSync, so you can wave that Terran goodbye for anything scripted, like this Mass Effect 2 sequence. But this is where we see something peculiar. With VSync engaged during cutscenes, PS4 Pro and even base PS4 drop dramatically in performance. This opener to Mass Effect 3, for example, puts PlayStation machines under One X and even base Xbox One in performance readouts. Of course, if we go back to gameplay, PS4 Pro takes pole position again, and it's again not clear what's causing it. But as far as cutscenes go, there is a switch up. Resolution targets remain at 1440p on Pro and One X though, and at 1080p on base PS4 and Xbox One. Speaking on visual differences while we've got this 4-way split up, it's worth stressing most settings are identical. As you can see, textures, effects and lighting quality are matched. The ambient occlusion quality on Pro and One X differs to the base machines, but between them, the difference is only very slight. Base machines have visibly low quality texture filtering, but again, that's the only other major drawback. It's just the 1080p versus 1440p split then that truly divides all four. As far as the remaster's upgrades go, no machine misses out on the tweaks from the original 2007 release of Mass Effect. So good stuff. Let's change view to focus on each machine in turn. Base Xbox One first. The quality mode for targeting 30fps makes more sense for Xbox One. This mode again targets 1080p with potential for dynamic resolution scaling, but once again drops under are surprisingly not typical. For anyone dipping into the trilogy on Xbox One, this is undoubtedly the way to do it. VSync is engaged so we can say farewell to tearing, and even drops are relatively unusual. The one outlier is this walk through the Citadel, which puts us at around 24 FPS. Fortunately though, it holds at its 30 FPS target with VSync surprisingly well outside of this case. There is a drop during the Mass Effect 3 intro cutscene, the infamous one, but otherwise we're getting a stable enough experience. At least this is based on the opening chapters of each game. There's a galaxy of content to test between all three games, but as a cursory look at the opening hours on each, it's far better than I'd hoped. The quality mode on Xbox One then, it's a winner. Next up is base PS4. The frame rate mode here again, as we've seen, falls short. Just like with the Xbox One's use of this mode, it feels more like a 30fps cap toggle than an option that truly fine-tunes for 60fps. Fortunately, the quality mode on base PS4 again has the answer. We keep 1080p as the resolution target, but VSync is engaged with 30fps in place, and honestly, it's a very well balanced 30fps experience all round, barring the Mass Effect 3 intro cutscene, which does dip into the 20s. Gameplay in fact holds up even better than PS4 Pro's quality 30fps mode, which we'll get onto later. The Eden Prime mission nails it for the most part as the most taxing intro mission of the trilogy. For perspective, this fight as we approach the stairs gives us the lowest reading I've seen it drop to across all three games. Mass Effect 2 and 3 are rock solid all throughout meanwhile, based on the first few hours. There is a sense then that base PS4, a 30fps target and 1080p make for a very well suited combination. More so than most other systems and resolutions, quality mode works for PS4 handsomely. Next, we turn to PS4 Pro's quality mode. Here we get upgraded from 1440p at 60fps to 4K at 30fps, though for once we do see an obvious use of resolution scaling. In this sub 30fps drop for Mass Effect 3's opener, for example, we see a range of between 1800p and 4K native. Unfortunately, PS4 Pro has some big issues in delivering 30fps at even this resolution range right now. So for example, you get sub 30fps drops during gameplay for that Eden Prime mission, as well as across the Citadel. Even Mass Effect 2's missions struggle in quality mode as well. Most striking is the fact that all these areas run at 30fps without much issue on base PS4 at 1080p, which does suggest PS4 Pro is aiming too high with its 1800p to 4K range, and therefore a lower res target would in theory help stabilize to 30fps here. Again, PS4 Pro's quality mode is surprisingly disappointing in the opening hours of each game. It's the platform with the smoothest 60fps mode, but one of the worst at 30. Last up is Xbox One X. The frame rate mode is accounted for, of course, 1440p at 60fps, though less stable than PS4 Pro's. Putting that aside for the quality mode, we're staring at a very different proposition here. 4K 30fps is the target, and the good news is it's a typically locked 4K as well, with DRS rarely in evidence, unlike PS4 Pro. This even survives the Mass Effect 3 intro sequence, where it retains a 30fps cap and a native 4K. Honestly, this is a huge success. Where the frame rate mode is a bit of a letdown, quality mode on One X holds to 30fps across the board with only the rarest one frame blip. It tops the base machine's instability for 30fps, and that's despite pushing 4 times the pixel count as well. Quality mode then is the best option by far for One X, which also makes it one of the most ideal ways to play on last gen. 4 consoles, 3 games and 2 modes, that's a lot of bases covered. The summary is pretty simple though. Firstly, 30fps is the better way to play on almost every console. Xbox One X in particular delivers 30 FPS with the best picture of the bunch, and is the one to recommend for overall stability. Secondly, for the smoothest 60 FPS game on last gen, you're looking at PS4 Pro on frame rate mode. However, it's only a win by comparison to the other far worse performing machines. In practice, PS4 Pro can't pull off 60 FPS consistently in every battle, every area, even the Normandy or the Citadel. Again, I'd recommend sticking to 30 on this one. Overall, the Legendary Edition strikes me as best optimized for base machines at 1080p 30, and the frame rate mode is more of a curiosity, an extra to see what happens with frame rates let loose from a 30 FPS cap. Anyway, that's all I have for today. If you did find this analysis useful or insightful in any way, feel free to like or subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell to get notifications as any new video lands. To get a high quality version of this video, check out our Patreon at digitalfoundry.net, and to get in touch with myself or the rest of the team, just use Twitter. But from me for now, thanks for watching.